Is it a 9 to 5 structure that's the main problem, or is it the job, or is it a mix of both? I don't know, because I'm thinking mainly it's the structure, the typical structure that we have, the typical 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, for example, structure that we have is the main issue. That goes for most people, let's just say working in the Western world. You know, I think that can be looked at. And I think a lot of the times we've just accepted the structure for all of these years. And I think that's people's main gripe, the structure. You can have issues in jobs, as you know, people can, but I'm speaking specifically on what we are accustomed to of how things work within the structure. And I think that's a lot of people's gripe. You know, you look at content sometimes online and you see some people saying, I've left the 9 to 5, I've left this position because, whatever reason it is. But a lot of it balls, a lot of the time onto the fact that the structure is something that they've kind of been fed up on. A lot of the time people will mention that they even are leaving the 9 to 5 and they don't know what their next step is. You see a lot of that online. And I think that's the main issue, the structure. It has to get to a point that maybe people are starting to look at, alternatives in terms of what they can do for their life, that maybe revolves themselves outside of the structure. You've been in positions, I'm sure, where you've had annual leave that is not the longest. I've seen positions where some people are having annual leaves are like 15, 16 days for the year. And that's inclusive of certain perks that sometimes, can come with your position, right? But a lot of the time you see people mainly not having the time outside of work, the time to do other things, the time to spend time with family, and I think people do just get on with it because that's the typical structure. And I think once we get to a point where maybe, we start looking at alternatives of how to improve it, then maybe you will see more of a positive outcome and more of a less disgruntled worker. Now, someone may say, oh, if you don't want to work, just go or do, another position. Fine. But at the same time, there's a typical way every position kind of works, and there is a structure. Now, I'm talking about the general person who works, the average person that works. You may get certain positions where you wouldn't have maybe this kind of issue because you're more in a maybe senior position, or you've got a certain type of career that involves maybe travel or whatever it involves that doesn't give you that typical bogged down sort of nature within the 9 to 5. I'm talking about the general person that will work that kind of structure. There is an issue with it, just having these thoughts about, how people think about this, because working has always been a thing. We know this, but it's mainly, I think, the structure and not having that opportunity to have more outside of what they do on a daily basis when it comes to work. You've been in positions also where you will see a lot of shortage of staff, and a lot of people having to do twice or even 3 times the workload. And that kind of environment and that thing happens generally in the 9 to 5. It generally happens where you just accept it, or you just, take on more than you're kind of able to, but you just do it. And yes, having a shortage of staff can be based on budget or different issues within a business. But again, that's another thing, being able to allow people to have some form of respite is sometimes not possible. Sometimes people are having to come in extra days for certain circumstances and situations. So these are things that I look at. I think having a 4-day work week, going back to that point, people's productivity, I think, will be increased, or it will be something where people realize that, oh, we've got 4 days now. Okay, we're going to be doing what we have to do in a more, in a more productive state, because we know that we've got the 4 days as opposed to the typical 5, and now more people are mindful of how they work. Obviously, if you're working with certain companies, they will, recognize the change as well, and then everyone will move accordingly. But we know what this world is built on, to be able to work as much hours and much time, more taxes and, so on and so forth. But I just want to stick to the structure aspect and think of, these things, because it's been a thing. It's been a major talking point, mainly online, with a lot of people having this kind of disgruntled outlook on it. But yeah, I think if there were changes, it will really, really, I think, maybe benefit a lot of people who have families, a lot of people who, want to be able to do other things that are not just maybe, fun based, which is not a problem, but mainly being able to venture out and attempt other things that are, that could be, more of their passions. But you got to look at it from this perspective as well. Would the structure change even matter as AI is coming? And AI is here, in fact, taking over the skilled, well, not the skilled, mainly the lower skilled positions. Would that even matter now, the structure? Because if they're coming, the people that are programming AI to do this, it gets to a point where you have to question the intention of AI and its relevancy. You have to question in terms of other people who are in positions that are, less skilled. And it seems the intention would be to just replace. And the structure I'm mentioning wouldn't really matter, because at the end of the day, they're going to create a structure that will benefit a business and obviously streamline work and be able to do things in ways that in their eyes will be more productive. So I think the best bet will be for the average person to try and create their own structure, because at the end of the day, there has to be a form of plan that one can do themselves, especially when you're seeing this the slow but quick eventually introduction of AI. So it has to be something that is looked at in all regards in terms of how the structure is and what the general person can do for themselves. Because as time goes on, it looks like it's going to be something that's going to be prominent, and having a structure that we're not a fan of, we may have to create our own. But it'll be interesting to find out what people think of this, because it's been a conversation. It's been an interesting one online, based on a lot of people's thoughts and feeling disgruntled about what the structure is. So yeah, we have to be just mindful of what can the general person do, and what can the general person look at when it comes to moving forward, of how they can improve their sort of situation. And if hopefully maybe government can look at ways to improve the environments and redesigned what we've always had. When people are working, they're feeling more interested. They're not having to fill out surveys that say, the working that they're doing, they're not really pleased about it. You've seen these kind of surveys. But these are just a few thoughts, and these are just things to look at. But like I said earlier, it will be good to find out what people think about this as well.